It's that time of year again, when thousands of students are about to take their final exams. But then what? Will they begin their search for a well-paid job, or will they choose to take a year off before entering the labour market? I'd like to welcome Toby Burrow to the studio, who is here to talk about the year he spent doing voluntary work in Madagascar.
Hi, Andrea. First of all, before I say anything that might come across as a bit negative, I completely recommend Madagascar. In fact, I just saw in the paper today that there's a documentary on it tonight, so any interested students should have a look. I sort of chose it partly because it was so far away from England and exotic, but mainly because the kind of work on the volunteer programme there looked like it was really going to stretch me and take me out of my comfort zone, like a test of character. And it wasn't like anyone could give me any advice. The students I knew from the year before us had gone off travelling, but only on a backpackers tour.
I'm sure that many parents are anxious when their children announce that they're going off to distant lands. How did yours react?
Honestly, they were fine about it. I suppose Dad tried to talk me out of it at first. He thought I should be getting on with finding a secure job, that kind of thing. But Mum was all for it. I think she would have loved to have travelled herself, but she missed out on that by having me and my sisters. Actually, she really got into it by getting out books from the library and going online, and I'd come home and she'd be telling me about the history and the culture, and that was quite handy, really. The only thing I had to prepare for was getting all my vaccinations done and taking a course of malaria tablets.
And when you arrived in Madagascar, was it what you expected?
Sort of. The organisation which was running the volunteer programme had been quite clear about the teaching work I'd be doing, but I admit I'd led a sheltered life up to then, and living in the village was quite an eye-opener. There was no running water and no sanitation, and that took quite a bit of getting used to. I didn't mind so much the fact that I was sleeping in a room with the other volunteers. Coming from a large family, I'm used to sharing my living space. And in fact, I actually need background noise to get off to sleep. Otherwise, I can't help but feel rather lonely.
Was there any time that you wanted to come running home?
No, I can't say there was. I remember I once went off sailing for a day. There were 6 of us, all from Europe, some mates from the programme and some guy I didn't know who worked for a hotel in the city. When we got back to shore, I found that my wallet had disappeared. Someone had obviously taken it. I felt that I couldn't directly accuse anyone, so I ended up saying nothing. A few days later, I heard that the hotel guy had been arrested for stealing other stuff, and eventually I got my empty wallet back. I realised that, whereas in England I was always careful about not leaving my stuff around, I'd got used to the honesty of the people in Madagascar. It was sad to be reminded that not everyone is like that.
And after all that, when you finally got home, did it take long to readjust to, if you like, normal life?
In a sense. There were many things I missed about Madagascar, although I knew that part of my life was definitely over. The odd thing was my attitude towards England. After Madagascar, I could see the enormous gap in consumption between the UK and African countries, and knew that if everyone in the world lived like a UK citizen, then there'd be no resources left to use. It was good seeing my family. It's a selfish thing, but even though you've changed, you don't want anyone else to, and I like the familiarity of home, but I didn't immediately get in touch with my friends from university. Being in Madagascar was a life-changing experience, and when I got back I felt rather disconnected to people I'd known previously, well, at least initially.
And now you can speak from experience. What should prospective gap year travellers know?
That's a hard one to answer because your experience is what you make it, and very much to do with the kind of person you are. Some graduates just go off and have fun for a year, and if that's what you're into, fine. There's hardly a moral obligation to do charity work. But if you do volunteer, for example, to do something for a local community, don't for a moment think you're superior in some way. You need to recognise what you're gaining in return from the people you're living with. I'd also avoid signing up for a project with a friend, because that way you won't make the effort to get to know new people. And make sure you choose a reputable company to go with, otherwise you'll just end up miserable and probably out of pocket.